Here is a rewrite of the text, maintaining the sentence count, approximate sentence length, meaning, and continuous prose style, utilizing professional American English grammar and avoiding YouTube community guideline violations. Karoline Leavitt committed the gravest blunder of her professional life precisely at 2:47 p.m. on a Thursday, and she did so beaming. The groundwork had been flawlessly laid the previous evening when her communications director shared the news with Breitbart and the Daily Caller, featuring a headline that essentially penned itself, "Press Secretary set to interrogate progressive Democrat Jasmine Crockett on live TV, a mandatory view Thursday briefing." By morning, the story saturated conservative circles on Twitter, and by lunchtime, 3 right-leaning podcasters had already uploaded reaction videos kicking off with the phrase, "Oh, this is going to be magnificent." Leavitt showed up early to organize her documents. She understood this chamber better than her own residents, noting how the illumination struck the rostrum at a complementary angle for television, the exact spacing from the microphone, and the specific cadence of assured command that transmitted via the C-SPAN feed without appearing hostile. At 27, she held the title of the youngest White House press secretary in U.S. history, donning that detail like others wore armor, and she possessed queries prepared regarding border figures, crime data, Democratic roadblocks on Capitol Hill, and the titles of legislation deceased in committee, the sort of inquiries that appear logical and particular but lack neat resolutions, or more accurately, resolutions deliverable in a quick soundbite without seeming overly defensive. She had executed this maneuver countless times on Fox News, podcasts, and at rallies, understanding how to construct an ambush and diminish an opponent before the cameras. What she failed to seriously consider was that the individual entering her briefing room might have dedicated the last 90 days to comparable preparation. She had naturally reviewed Crockett's public history, covering the viral clips and the clashes with Republicans during other proceedings. She was aware of the civil rights history, the tenure as a public defender, and the quick wit, yet she had written all of it off as mere Democratic theatrics, the variety of political acting that resonated with the base but crumbled under consistent pressure applied by the person genuinely managing the chamber. This space belonged to her rostrum, her media contingent. She determined who posed inquiries, which queries received follow-ups, and exactly when the session concluded. She hadn't calculated for the contingency that she might have welcomed someone entirely uninterested in acting for her audience, someone who had meticulously constructed their case prior to her arrival and was merely awaiting a platform to deliver it. At 2:43, Jasmine Crockett entered, wearing a navy suit and carrying an iPad in one hand and a manila folder in the other, which was neither bulky nor dramatic, just present, along with something else. A small USB drive she arranged on the table before her with no description, no formality, and without so much as a second look at it once it was down. Leavitt's gaze darted to the USB drive for a split second before returning upward, her grin remaining steady. "Representative Crockett," she began, projecting the pleasant condescension of an individual who had already finalized the outcome, "we appreciate your bravery in appearing here today." "I appreciate the invitation, Karoline," Crockett replied, settling into her seat. Her smile was courteous and businesslike, yet it failed to animate her eyes. "I brought some supporting documents," she noted. "I see that," Leavitt countered. "Simply for reference," Crockett added, "should any specific issues arise." The initial fracture in Leavitt's demeanor appeared, as thin as a hair and undetectable to anyone not actively searching for it, but it existed because Leavitt had scrutinized enough legal questioning to recognize exactly how an attorney appeared when they already possessed the answer to every inquiry they intended to pose. It was that specific stillness, the complete lack of nervousness, and eyes that were not evaluating the environment because they had already assessed it weeks prior. Jasmine Crockett appeared exactly that way. 10 million individuals were viewing the live feed across C-SPAN, YouTube, and various social media platforms, while the right-wing podcasters who had uploaded their reaction clips that morning now watched with increasing discomfort as the atmosphere in the room failed to shift in the anticipated direction. Leavitt cleared her throat, attempting to seize control of the narrative. "Let's begin with the border, Representative," your party has consistently opposed. Actually, prior to discussing policy, Crockett interrupted, I have a quick procedural inquiry. She gazed at Leavitt with the tranquility of someone who had uttered these words 1,000 times in courtrooms and had never once been unsettled by the response. You utilize the phrase rule of law from that rostrum quite frequently. I tabulated 47 instances over the last 12 months, so I'd prefer to initiate the conversation there. She unlocked the manila folder. Inside, arranged in meticulous sequence, were 13 communications, each displaying the identical letterhead and each bearing a date stamp in the top right corner, ranging from 2022 to 2025. She arranged them on the table one at a time in order, resembling a card player revealing a hand that had been pending since the very first card was distributed. These are communications from the Federal Election Commission, Crockett stated. Your own government's campaign finance watchdog transmitted these to your congressional campaign, Karoline for Congress, over a span of 3 years. 13 communications, Ms. Leavitt, detailing infractions of federal campaign finance statutes. The chamber, which had been buzzing with the specific expectant energy of reporters anticipating a totally different scenario, fell completely silent. She arranged the initial communication on the table, followed by the second. She was not rushing as she had all afternoon, and the room sensed it. Your campaign received donations exceeding the legal maximum under federal statute, and campaigns are mandated to reimburse those excessive contributions within 60 days. That is not a mere recommendation, it is codified law. It is the type of fundamental campaign finance obligation that every candidate receives a briefing on prior to filing their candidacy. 60 days with no ambiguity. She positioned the third communication, then the fourth. Your campaign did not reimburse them, not in 60 days, not in 6 months, not in 1 year, nor in 2 years. She placed the FEC filing on the table alongside the communications. According to this filing submitted just last month, your campaign still carries a debt of $360,370 to over 100 creditors as of today. Included among those creditors is former New Hampshire Governor Craig Benson, who contributed beyond the limitation and is still owed a reimbursement. Also, Remington Research Group is owed $41,000 for polling services, and she consulted her records, $46,747 to Axiom Strategies, a political consulting organization that is currently, as of this very week, acting as your personal media contact when reporters inquire about this exact liability. A journalist from Politico halted mid-keystroke, looked upward, then glanced back down and commenced typing more rapidly. An organization you owe $46,747 is publicly representing you to reporters asking about the $46,747 you owe them. I wish to ensure I comprehend that dynamic accurately. Is that setup where an unsatisfied creditor is simultaneously your current media contact, something you revealed to anyone when you accepted this position? Leavitt's media coaching activated. Campaign finance matters are managed by staff and legal counsel. I possess no personal involvement in— Did you read these communications? Crockett inquired. Her voice had altered neither in pitch nor tempo. It simply pressed forward as though the disruption had never happened. These 13 communications from a federal regulatory body informing your campaign, it was in violation of federal statute. Did you personally review them? Campaign operations are directed by— Yes or no, Ms. Leavitt. Did you read them? The quietude stretched for 4 seconds. In a briefing room with active cameras, 4 seconds constitutes a very long duration. I was briefed on the pertinent— I shall interpret that as a negative, Crockett noted. She made a single notation. Basi. Consequently, the summary of what we have confirmed is this. Your campaign received 13 federal compliance notifications over 3 years, currently carries a debt of $326,370 to more than 100 creditors, possesses 0 cash available, and the organization representing you publicly is one of the creditors you have not compensated, and you are not personally cognizant of any of this. She gazed at Leavitt. You occupy that rostrum 47 times a year and inform the American public that this administration upholds the rule of law. I possess 13 communications from a federal body stating your own campaign could not adhere to it. You either were aware of those communications and selected not to respond, or you were unaware, which signifies you possess no oversight of your own campaign finances. She paused. Which is it? Because both responses matter when you are the individual who speaks on behalf of the United States government every single day. The chamber was extremely quiet. The woman who informs America what the law is, Crockett noted, could not adhere to it herself. Leavitt attempted to redirect. Her training was solid and her reactions were superb, and under typical circumstances she was the most disciplined individual in any chamber she entered. She redirected to the border, to crime, to the economy, and to the Democratic Party's shortcomings, which she could recite from memory in any sequence and at any velocity. Crockett permitted her to redirect. She listened with complete focus, in the manner a surgeon listens to a patient describe ailments prior to opening the medical chart. When Leavitt concluded, Crockett stated, "I'd prefer to discuss what you have been asserting from that rostrum because I have been tracking the record." She opened a new segment of her folder. On January 9th, you stated from that rostrum, "Tariffs are a tax reduction for the American people." Those were your precise words. I possess the transcript. She placed it on the table. The Congressional Budget Office, which is nonpartisan, serves both parties, and has done so for 50 years, concluded that the current tariff policy costs the typical American household approximately $1,200 per year in elevated prices on imported goods. That does not constitute a tax reduction. The CBO termed it in their phrasing a consumption tax borne primarily by American consumers. She placed the CBO report adjacent to the transcript, two documents side by side. Did you read the CBO report prior to making that assertion? Leavitt responded, "Economic policy entails intricate trade-offs that a solitary CBO analysis cannot comprehensively encompass." Did you read the report? The administration's stance is that tariffs generate leverage that culminates in superior trade agreements, which ultimately, Ms. Leavitt, Crockett's voice was patient and conclusive simultaneously, the voice of someone who has listened to every iteration of this response and is already prepared for all of them. The report spans 12 pages. It is drafted in clear English. Did you read it before you informed the American public that tariffs are a tax reduction? Silence. Moving forward, Crockett continued, picking up a second document. On May 19th, you stated, "This tax and spending legislation does not increase the deficit," from that rostrum, on the record. She arranged the document on the table. The CBO analysis of that legislation, $3 trillion added to the federal deficit over 10 years. Not zero, not roughly zero, $3.3 trillion. That figure was published publicly by a nonpartisan government body prior to your making that assertion. She gazed at Leavitt steadily. When you claim the legislation does not increase the deficit, the CBO had already stated it adds $3.3 trillion. You either were unaware of that, which creates inquiries regarding your preparation, or you were aware of it and stated the inverse, which creates different inquiries. Leavitt attempted a different approach. The CBO utilizes static scoring that does not account for the economic expansion this legislation will produce through. I am pleased you mentioned methodology, Crockett stated without breaking stride, because when the CBO analyzed Democratic spending initiatives during the Biden administration, your party referenced those identical CBO analyses as conclusive evidence of fiscal irresponsibility dozens of times. I possess the clips should you wish to review them. She touched the iPad without unlocking it, merely resting her hand on it, the understated gesture of an individual who possesses the proof and wishes you to know it. Is the framework that the CBO methodology is dependable when it yields figures that assist your position, and flawed when it yields figures that do not? Because that is not a critique of methodology, Ms. Leavitt. That is merely selecting your sources based on the conclusion you have already determined. Economic forecasting entails inherent, Your uncertainty regarding CBO forecasts only emerges when they contradict administration talking points. When the uncertainty shifts the other way, you appear very certain indeed. She picked up a third document, her voice remaining unaltered in tone and tempo, maintaining the steady rhythm of someone constructing something brick by brick. On January 28th, during your inaugural briefing, you stated, and I quote, "The Biden administration mandated the mass destruction of more than 100 million chickens, resulting in the egg shortage American families are enduring today." She placed the document down, allowing the room to absorb that sentence. The USDA records demonstrate that chickens were culled due to avian influenza, a disease, a virus, a natural occurrence. The culling was carried out by farmers and agricultural officials responding to an outbreak. There exists no government directive, no order, no memorandum, no policy ruling mandating chicken culling. It was a disease. She gazed at Leavitt. "I wish to inquire about something very specific. You stated the Biden administration mandated the destruction. That word mandated signifies an intentional government action, a ruling, an order. Can you display that order, any document, a memorandum, a directive, a policy record exhibiting a government instruction to kill chickens?" Leavitt replied, "The administration's agricultural policies fostered conditions that is not what you asserted. You stated mandated." "Is there a document?" "The broader context of their food policy. Is there a document exhibiting a government order to kill chickens? Yes or no?" The fourth quietude of the briefing occurred, each one lasting slightly longer than the previous, accumulating in the chamber like something physical. "Here is what I wish for this room to comprehend," Crockett stated, and for the initial time she pivoted slightly to address the reporters directly, the way a prosecutor addresses a jury when the witness has concluded testifying and the opportunity for evidence has yielded to meaning. Each of these assertions was made from that rostrum, the rostrum of the United States government, not a campaign rally, not a television green room. The official platform where allies take notes, where adversaries take notes, where the American public listens and attempts to comprehend what their government is doing and whether they can place trust in what they are being informed. She paused. And the response, based on what I have just demonstrated, appears to be that they cannot always trust it, because the criterion for statements made from that rostrum is not accuracy, it is utility. An assertion is made if it is useful to the current narrative. It is not made if it is not, irrespective of whether it is truthful, Leavitt replied. "I take offense at the characterization that I deliberately—" "I have not characterized your intention," Crockett stated flatly. "I have outlined a pattern. Intention is your concern, while the pattern is observable by everyone in this chamber." She gazed at the gathered reporters. When the voice of America articulates things that are not true, what occurs to America's voice? The inquiry lingered in the room with no response provided. A Reuters correspondent was typing, an AP reporter had her phone out, and a Bloomberg reporter had already submitted a first take. Even the Fox News correspondent, his expression bearing the cautious look of a man determining how to structure something he would prefer not to report on, was writing. She picked up her iPad. "I wish to show you something." She linked the iPad to the briefing room's viewing screen, the screen that typically displayed administration graphics and policy slides. Today it displayed a split screen with two video windows side by side, each paused at the opening frame. "These are segments of you, Ms. Leavitt, making assertions regarding policy over the past 2 years. I wish to examine them together." She tapped the screen. The left side showed Leavitt on Fox News, October 2023, wearing a conservative blazer in a familiar setting, displaying the relaxed assurance of someone on sympathetic ground. "These employment figures are completely fabricated. The Biden economy is in tatters. Genuine Americans are hurting. This is an economic catastrophe." In the right side showed Leavitt at the White House briefing room rostrum, January 2025, in the same chamber with a different president. "We are witnessing unprecedented economic expansion. Employment figures are exceptional. The American economy has never been more robust." Crockett paused both segments, allowing the room to examine them side by side. "Jobs added in October 2023 under Biden, 150,000. Jobs added in December 2024 under Trump, 140 seated. She arranged the Bureau of Labor Statistics printouts on the table. Biden's figure was higher by 10,000, but when Biden achieved it, the numbers were fabricated and the economy was in tatters. When Trump achieves a lower figure, it is unprecedented and exceptional. She gazed at Leavitt with genuine inquisitiveness, the variety that is more devastating than disdain. Assist me in comprehending the mathematics. Leavitt replied, the comprehensive economic context was entirely distinct in terms of inflationary pressure and supply chain. GDP expansion in Q3 2023 under Biden, 2.9%. GDP expansion in Q3 2024 under Trump, 3.1%. Unemployment, October 2023, 3.8%. Unemployment, December 2024, 3.7%. Crockett recited each figure flatly and clearly. The economic context is nearly identical, the figures are nearly identical, and the solitary variable that altered is the name of the individual occupying the Oval Office. She loaded the second split screen. The left side showed Leavitt on a podcast, August 2023. Biden is conducting himself like a monarch. He is circumventing Congress and governing by decree. This is absolute power. This is not how a republic functions. The right side showed Leavitt at the rostrum, January 2025. Executive orders constitute a vital constitutional authority. The president possesses every right to act decisively on behalf of the American people. Biden's executive order frequency, Crockett noted, was approximately 2 per month throughout his presidency. Trump's frequency in his initial 2 weeks, 43 executive orders, more than 20 per week. She permitted the arithmetic to perform its work. Biden at 2 per month is absolute power. Trump at 20 per week, 10 times more rapid, is a vital constitutional authority. I am searching for the principle, Ms. Leavitt. I have been seeking it since you activated that initial segment. At what figure does a republic become an absolute power? Exists there a threshold, and is it recorded somewhere? Leavitt replied, the substance of executive orders matters, not merely the rate. Crockett proceeded without hesitation, in the manner a skilled trial lawyer moves, never permitting the witness opportunity to settle. Let us discuss substance. Biden's orders included broadening health care access and safeguarding worker protections. Trump's orders retracted health care access and diminished worker protections, opposite policies. You condemned Biden's and commended Trump's, so it is not the quantity and it is not the substance. She gazed at Leavitt. Detit. What is it? What is the variable? Because from my perspective, the variable is simply who is appending their signature. She loaded the third split screen, and this was where the briefing chamber altered. The left side showed Leavitt on Newsmax, March 2024, appearing urgent and grave, leaning forward. We must discuss Biden's age. He is 81 years old, and the cognitive decline is apparent to anyone observing. He does not possess the mental sharpness for the position. Age matters. The American public deserves a president who is astute, who is present, and who can manage the requirements of the most demanding job in the world. The right side showed Leavitt at the rostrum, January 2025, appearing warm and self-assured. The president's decades of experience are priceless. Age brings sagacity and discernment, and certain things only develop with time. President Trump's experience is a tremendous benefit to this nation. Crockett halted both segments, saying nothing for 5 seconds. 5 seconds constitutes a very long duration in a briefing room with active cameras. Then she stated softly, as though calculating arithmetic, Joe Biden, 81 years old, cognitive decline, lacks the mental sharpness, too aged. Pause. Donald Trump, 78 years old, wise, experienced, tremendous benefit. She looked up from the screen. That is a 3-year discrepancy, Ms. Leavitt. Biden is 3 years more advanced in age than Trump, and in your framework, 3 years represents the span between cognitive decline and priceless sagacity. She angled her head. I wish to comprehend the mechanism. Is it a specific birthday, a particular age at which sagacity replaces decline, because you appear very certain regarding both ends of this? very certain that 81 signifies cognitive failure, and very certain that 78 signifies a wise elder statesman, and I am genuinely attempting to locate the rationale that yields both conclusions simultaneously. A reporter in the third row, a senior Reuters correspondent who had reported on 6 administrations, produced a sound, just a small sound, the reflexive sound of an individual observing something so preposterous it briefly bypasses the professional filter. Then another reporter, followed by a third, not laughter precisely, but the sound of people encountering something that is simultaneously humorous and genuinely disturbing. Leavitt stood at the rostrum, and for the initial time in the briefing, possibly for the initial time in a very long while, she had nothing to say, not a redirect, not a talking point. The words had simply departed her. "I shall allow you a moment," Crockett stated. She poured a glass of water from the carafe on the table, drank it slowly, and set it down. Prepared? She loaded the fourth split screen. The left side showed Leavitt, November 2023. "The deficit is spinning out of control. We are spending ourselves into oblivion. This negligent expenditure will obliterate our children's future. We require fiscal accountability immediately." The right side showed Leavitt at the rostrum 2025. "This spending initiative is a strategic investment in America's future. Occasionally you must expend funds to generate growth. This is not negligent, it is forward-thinking." Biden's projected deficit increase over 10 years, $1.7 trillion, Crockett stated. Trump's current budget, $2.3 trillion over 10 years. Biden's smaller figure was obliterating our children's future. Trump's larger figure is a strategic investment. She set down the iPad. "Ms. Leavitt, I have been seated here for 40 minutes attempting to identify a principle that explains all of these stances. A consistent framework, a rule that yields jobs good under Trump, fabricated under Biden, executive orders constitutional under Trump, absolute power under Biden, expenditure strategic under Trump, negligent under Biden, 78 years old wise, 81 years old cognitively declining." She clasped her hands on the table. "I cannot identify the principle. The solitary variable that yields all of these outcomes consistently is Trump is correct and Biden was incorrect. That does not constitute a principle of governance. It is not a principle of economics or statute or constitutional analysis. It is a principle of allegiance." She gazed at Leavitt directly. "And allegiance is acceptable. Individuals are loyal. However, allegiance is not what you are marketing from that rostrum. From that rostrum, you are marketing truth. You are occupying that position in the name of the United States government and informing 330 million individuals, this is what is actual, this is what the evidence demonstrates, this is the truth." Her voice lowered slightly. "And it is not, Ms. Leavitt," Crockett stated, and something in her tone shifted. Not softer, precisely, but slower, weightier, the way a dialogue alters register when it transitions from the professional to the personal. "I wish to discuss something distinct now, not figures or video segments." She secured the folder and did not reopen it. "I wish to discuss a woman named Bruna Ferrer." Something passed across Leavitt's face, brief, managed, vanished in less than a second, yet it had been there. "Ms. Ferrer arrived in the United States as a child," Crockett stated. "She has resided in Revere, Massachusetts for more than 25 years. She possesses a son, a United States citizen born and raised in this nation. According to her attorney and to investigations of Massachusetts court documents, she possesses no validated criminal history. The Department of Homeland Security, when queried regarding her detention, stated that she had a prior arrest for battery. Her attorney states he is unaware of any such accusation. Journalists investigated the court documents and could not locate it." She paused. "In November of last year, Immigration and Customs Enforcement apprehended Ms. Ferrer. She is currently being detained at a detention center in Louisiana." Crockett gazed at Leavitt. "She is simultaneously the mother of your nephew." The briefing chamber became completely immobile, not the professional silence of individuals focusing attention, but the distinct, denser silence of people who have just been informed of something they were not anticipating and are attempting to adjust. "Michael Leavitt, your brother, fathered a child with Bruna Ferrer," Crockett stated. That child is your nephew. He is an American citizen, and his mother is in a detention center in Louisiana, detained by the identical system you have championed from that rostrum by name hundreds of times. Bites. Leavitt's voice, when it emerged, was disciplined and instantaneous. I have not communicated with Ms. Ferrer in years, and I possess no involvement in that case whatsoever. This administration enforces the law impartially, and I endorse that. I am not accusing you of involvement. Crockett's hand moved upward, not sharply, just resolutely, the gesture of someone redirecting a dialogue that has commenced heading somewhere it was not intended to go. I wish to inquire about something different. She waited until the chamber was fully with her. You have occupied that rostrum and informed America that ICE enforcement is focused, that it is compassionate, that it concentrates on criminals and individuals with serious records. You have stated that families are not being fractured without cause, and you have stated the system is functioning as intended. She gazed at Leavitt steadily. And then the system arrived for your own family. I endorse the rule of law impartially for— I comprehend that is your stance, Crockett noted. I am not inquiring about your stance. I am inquiring about something more demanding than that. She leaned forward slightly. I believe you constructed a concept of what this enforcement resembles. Focused, surgical, pursuing individuals who possess records, individuals who present a genuine danger, and that concept was abstract and it was useful, and it was easy to champion from a rostrum to millions of individuals who will never have to consider it personally. She gazed at Leavitt. And then the abstract became concrete. It arrived in Revere, Massachusetts. It placed the mother of your nephew, the woman who gave your brother a child, who gave your family a nephew who is an American citizen, in a detention center in Louisiana, and the policy you had been championing became a person. Leavitt's meticulously composed expression wavered just for a second, something behind it that was not a press secretary's reaction to an adversarial question. The official DHS rationale for detaining Bruna Ferrer, the mother of your nephew, a woman who has resided in this country for 25 years, is an arrest record that her attorney cannot locate and that journalists cannot locate in Massachusetts court documents. That constitutes the documentation supporting her detention, a record that may not exist. She paused. When you champion this system from that rostrum, when you term it focused, when you term it compassionate, when you state it only impacts individuals with serious criminal histories, are you contemplating cases like Bruna Ferrer's? Or is she the variety of case you did not envision when you were formulating those talking points? No effective response existed, and no escape route had been constructed into this predicament. The chamber was aware of it, Leavitt was aware of it, and the 10 million individuals viewing were aware of it. Oh, you constructed the rationale for this apparatus, Crockett stated softly. Every day from that rostrum you informed America it was accurate and just and pursuing the correct individuals, and then it arrived for your family, and the record it utilized to justify it does not appear to exist. She leaned back. That is not focused enforcement. That is what occurs when you construct an apparatus and instruct it to move rapidly and determine that posing inquiries about individual cases constitutes an obstacle to efficiency. The apparatus does not know that Bruna Ferrer is your nephew's mother, and it does not know that the record it is citing may not exist. It simply moves because you inform the American public it should. Crockett stood up, not dramatically or aggressively in the manner a lawyer stands at the conclusion of a lengthy day in court when they are about to deliver the final statement they intend to make, and they wish their posture to emphasize the occasion. I wish to consolidate this, she stated, because I have displayed a great deal to you today, and I wish to ensure nothing is overlooked. She did not utilize notes. She had articulated these points to herself enough times in enough distinct arrangements that they existed now as something nearer to memory than preparation. 47 times you stated rule of law from that rostrum while your campaign was disregarding 13 communications from a federal body informing you that you were in violation of federal statute. $326,000 still owed to more than 100 creditors, including the organization currently representing you to the media. She allowed that to resonate. You informed America tariffs are a tax reduction. The CBO stated they cost families $2,200. You informed America the spending legislation does not increase the deficit. The CBO stated $3.3 trillion. You stated Biden mandated the mass destruction of chickens. The USDA demonstrates it was a disease outbreak. You stated Biden's 150,000 jobs were fabricated and shameful. You stated Trump's 140,000 jobs were unprecedented. You stated Biden's 2 executive orders a month was absolute power. You stated Trump's 20 a week was constitutional. You stated an 81-year-old had cognitive decline. You stated a 78-year-old had priceless sagacity. You championed a detention system as focused and compassionate, and that system detained the mother of your nephew on a record that does not appear to exist. She halted. This is not an accumulation of errors. Errors are arbitrary and disperse in all directions. This accumulation possesses a direction. Every solitary inconsistency indicates the same path. What benefits the current administration is truthful, and what does not is false. Truth is not the operational criterion, utility is. She gazed at Leavitt. Consequently, I possess one inquiry, and I would prefer you to answer it. The chamber held itself very immobile. When you stated Biden's economy was in tatters with 150,000 jobs added, were you articulating the truth? Or when you state Trump's economy with 140,000 jobs is unprecedented, are you articulating the truth now? Because those are the identical figures. One of those assertions is a falsehood. They cannot both be accurate. The figures are identical. She permitted the inquiry to exist in the chamber for a moment. Were you lying then, or are you lying now? It was not quite an inquiry anymore. It was something that had progressed beyond the grammar of inquiries into something else, a fact, an accusation, a thing placed in the chamber that would remain there irrespective of what followed. Leavitt opened her mouth. Economic context is a matter of analysis, and the comprehensive environment in which figures exist communicates a very distinct. The figures are 150,000 and 140,000, Crockett stated. I have displayed the data to you, I have displayed both segments, and I have displayed the dates and the sources. Those figures do not necessitate context, they necessitate an answer. From Reuters. Karoline, the split-screen comparisons seem to exhibit direct contradictions across multiple policy spheres. Do you possess any substantive response? From AP. Regarding Bruna Ferrer, the mother of your nephew, are you stating you endorse her continued detention given that the cited record appears not to exist? From Bloomberg. The 13 FEC letters your campaign received, 13 federal compliance warnings over 3 years, and owed $326,000 as of last month. How does that reconcile with the rule of law argument you make from this rostrum? Even the Fox News correspondent, his face bearing the specific discomfort of an individual whose professional allegiances are in direct conflict with what his eyes are showing him. Karoline, some of these contradictions are fairly stark. Do you possess a response to the specific examples? Leavitt's hands gripped the sides of the rostrum, not shaking violently, just the fine tremor of someone whose body has been asked to maintain a posture that the rest of them is no longer willing to uphold. This is a coordinated partisan. I coordinated with whom? Crockett's reaction was instantaneous. I performed this research with 2 former associates from my law firm. No party involvement, no coordination, just publicly accessible information organized chronologically. The reporters in this chamber are not coordinating with me. They are posing inquiries because you have been apprehended in documented contradictions on live television, and they possess a professional obligation to inquire. This briefing has proceeded completely. This briefing has proceeded exactly where evidence leads things, Crockett stated. You invited me here, you arranged this as a performance, and you informed your communications team it would be mandatory viewing television. You were correct, it is. Leavitt's voice, when it finally broke free from whatever had been restraining it, emerged too loud and too rapid. This briefing is concluded. Her hand struck the rostrum. The sound was sharp and carried to every microphone in the chamber, and every camera captured it. She snatched her folder. The thin one, the one she had brought because she had anticipated needing so little, and started moving toward the side exit with quick steps, her heels clicking on the floor, producing the sound of someone who has decided that departing is preferable to remaining and has not yet considered what departing looks like. Crockett did not move and did not elevate her voice, just stated clearly enough for the microphones. "Ms. Leavitt?" Something in the tone made Leavitt halt, her hand on the door. "You can walk out that door, yes, Crockett stated. "But everyone here is going to witness it, everyone viewing is going to witness it, and you know what they will retain?" A pause. "They will retain that when confronted with evidence you departed. They will retain that when inquired whether you were lying then or lying now, you possess no answer. They will retain that when provided the opportunity to correct the record in public, on camera, with every reporter in Washington observing, you selected the door." Leavitt stood at the door for 2 seconds, then 3, before she pushed through it and was gone. The briefing chamber erupted. Crockett remained seated while the environment transformed around her. Reporters uploaded segments before they had even finished viewing them, and camera operators who had reported on 100 briefings were replaying the age comparison on their monitors. A Washington Post reporter was already on the phone with her editor. "You need to examine the split screens. No, just view the C-SPAN feed, just view it." Crockett organized her documents with the same methodical precision she had brought to the entire afternoon, replacing each section in its position, and returning each document to order with nothing rushed and nothing performed. Then she picked up the USB drives, 11 of them, one per major outlet, and commenced distributing them to the reporters who had clustered around her table. "Everything is on there," she stated. "Full video segments, unedited with timestamps and source citations, the FEC communications, all 13, the CBO reports, the USDA records, every figure I referenced with the source document appended, and every segment I activated with the full, unedited original." Every hand in the chamber went up and a CNN correspondent pushed through initial. "Representative Crockett, what was your objective today?" "To pose inquiries," she stated simply. "I am an attorney. That is what we do." "Where did you acquire all of this?" "Public record. Every document I displayed to her is publicly accessible." "The video segments, she created those herself." "The FEC communications are public filings, and the CBO reports are on their website. Anyone could have performed this. I simply did." "Did you anticipate her walking out?" Crockett pondered that for a moment. "I anticipated her struggling with the contradictions. I thought she might struggle harder." A pause. "However, individuals who cannot champion their stances tend to depart the chamber. It is a pattern I have observed previously." "Are you calling for her resignation?" "I am calling for the American public to be informed of the truth from that rostrum. Whether that signifies she alters her relationship with facts or someone else performs this job, that is not my ruling, but something must alter. You cannot operate the information infrastructure of the United States government on the operational principle that whatever is useful is truthful." She picked up her iPad and her folder. "I possess work to perform," she stated, and walked out. By evening, the segment had been viewed 40 million times, and by the following morning it was everywhere. The split screens, the age comparison, the moment the briefing chamber had briefly and involuntarily broken into sound, which was the reflexive noise of professional reporters observing something too preposterous to absorb in silence. The hand striking the rostrum, the footsteps, the door, and 15 seconds on loop on every platform in every language. "Were you lying then, or are you lying now?" Silence. Footsteps. A door. Steps. Social media generated its verdict within hours. Karoline Leavitt invited a prosecutor to her own trial and is stunned the prosecutor arrived prepared. The age issue, Biden at 81 is cognitive decline, Trump at 78 is sagacity. That is a 3-year discrepancy, and she articulated both aloud. Press Secretary speedrun any percentage, walked out of her own briefing in under 90 minutes. POV: "You just understood what receipts signifies the painful way. I am a Republican and I am mortified. This was a catastrophe. We merited every second of it." Late-night programs rewrote their opening segments, and Saturday Night Live convened an emergency writers' room assembly. The split screens write themselves, one producer noted. We literally just have to broadcast the segments. Political commentators appeared on every channel. Observe the moment she positions the third FEC communication on the table, one stated on CNN. Right there, that is when Leavitt's eyes alter. That is when she realizes what variety of afternoon this is going to be, and she still cannot halt it. The age comparison fractured the room, stated an NBC commentator. You can actually perceive it on the C-SPAN audio, that sound from the press corps. These are seasoned professionals who report on the White House every day. They have witnessed everything, and they could not restrain it because it was not merely a contradiction. It was the identical individual on camera asserting with complete assurance the precise inverse of what she had asserted previously regarding a 3-year age discrepancy, as though the prior segment had never been created. A Democratic strategist observed, she did not need to elevate her voice, and she did not need to perform outrage. Every inquiry was measured, and every document was sourced. She permitted the evidence to perform the work because she trusted the evidence. That is what preparation looks like when it encounters someone who possesses none. And a Republican consultant, off the record but widely quoted, the walkout, that is the image that endures everything. You can spin contradictions. You cannot spin fleeing on C-SPAN from your own briefing chamber. That segment endures forever. Inside the White House, the emergency assembly yielded nothing. It was an ambush. She transmitted the invitation. Her team leaked it to Breitbart that morning as a victory lap. The headline was still active. The segments were selectively edited. They broadcast live on C-SPAN, unedited. The full originals were now on 11 USB drives at every major outlet. The statistics were out of context. The CBO, the BLS, the USDA, her own government's bodies, several managed by Republican appointees. It was coordinated with Democrats. Crockett stated on live camera into a microphone, former law firm associates, no party coordination, all public record. One senior advisor finally articulated what everyone was thinking, and it leaked to 3 outlets within 48 hours. She did not get ambushed. She invited someone to cross-examine her and did not prepare for a cross-examination. That is not an ambush, that is just not performing the homework. 2 weeks later, Leavitt was still at the rostrum, yet everything was distinct. The same confident grin, the same pressed attire, the same rehearsed voice, but the reporters who faced her every day had altered. They had observed what 97 minutes of preparation could yield. They had observed her crumble under inquiries that were not intricate, that were simply documented, and they had commenced performing their own homework. Inquiries at briefings were sharper now, sources were referenced, and follow-ups did not release. 3 times in the 2 weeks succeeding, reporters confronted her with direct contradictions between what she had asserted at the rostrum and what the public record demonstrated. She navigated them with professional fluidness, better prepared now and more cautious with words, yet the chamber had altered around her, and she could sense it every time she stepped up to that rostrum. Anonymous quotations commenced emerging in the press from White House officials unnamed. She is more cautious now, but cautious is distinct from credible. She forfeited something that day that you do not retrieve. The walkout. We keep returning to the walkout. Every time something goes awry in a briefing now, someone in the room recalls the walkout. She is proficient at her job in many aspects, but Crockett exposed something fundamental, that the entire operation functions on spin, and the moment someone appears with actual documents, the spin possesses nothing underneath it. Republican strategists attempted to restructure the narrative, and sympathetic columnists contended that Crockett had been aggressive, that the briefing chamber was not a courtroom, and that facts could be interpreted numerous ways. Their comment sections recounted a different narrative. She invited Crockett. How is any of this an ambush? Perhaps do not state things that are not truthful if you do not wish to get caught stating things that are not truthful. I voted for Trump twice, and this was mortifying. She got obliterated, and she merited it. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett's phone did not cease ringing. Democratic committees desired her on panels, progressive organizations desired her for fundraisers, and other members of Congress inquired softly in hallways and in elevators, "How did you assemble that? Who assisted you with the research?" She declined most of the appeals, returning to her committee assignments, back to her legislation, and back to reviewing files that most individuals did not read, because most individuals did not think the specifics mattered until the specifics culminated on a table in a White House briefing room, and a press secretary could not account for any of them. When questioned regarding the briefing and hallway interviews, she was consistent. "I performed my homework. That is the entire account." "Do you believe you were too severe on her?" "I believe the American public deserves honesty from the White House rostrum. If holding someone to the record they created is too severe, then we have normalized something we should not have normalized." What would you state to individuals who believe it was a partisan assault? View the video. Every source I reference serves both parties and has for decades. I did not fabricate her contradictions. She created them on camera over 2 years. I organized them chronologically and requested her to explain them. If that is a partisan assault, then the truth possesses a partisan problem, and that problem is not mine. Would you perform it again? She did not waver. If invited, every time. I shall always appear with facts. That is the job. Leavitt's phone still illuminated with messages every morning, and she still stood at the rostrum every afternoon delivering the lines she was provided, championing the stances she was requested to champion, and redirecting on the inquiries she could not answer. However, alone in her office at night, she sometimes found herself viewing the segment, not the full 97 minutes, just the 15 seconds. Were you lying then, or are you lying now? The silence succeeding it, her own footsteps, the door. She had been in this position for 90 days, and she already comprehended something she had not comprehended on the day she transmitted Crockett an invitation and leaked it to Breitbart as a offering to conservative media, that the rostrum was not protection, it was exposure. Every word uttered from it was on the record, every contradiction sat there in the archive waiting, and every assertion could be positioned adjacent to the evidence, and the evidence did not concern itself with who was inquiring. She had genuinely believed that the job was to be the most self-assured individual in the chamber, to control the narrative, to define the terms, to smile through the inquiries and redirect and pivot and outlast. She still believed most of it, but she knew now that it only functioned until the day someone walked in who had already spent 3 months reviewing everything you had ever uttered and had brought all of it with them in a manila folder. And then self-assurance was just a story you narrated to yourself, and the rostrum was just a spot to stand, and the truth was still the truth, sitting there in the documents waiting for someone with the patience to organize it. The briefing room rostrum stood in the identical spot it had always stood. It would be there tomorrow and the day after and the year after. Future press secretaries would stand behind it and deliver their lines and deflect their inquiries and perform their self-assurance for the cameras. However, something had adjusted in that chamber on a Thursday afternoon, something that everyone who was present had perceived and could not quite articulate and would not overlook. A civil rights attorney from Texas had walked into the most controlled media environment in the world on someone else's turf with someone else's regulations, surrounded by someone else's press corps, and had posed inquiries that could not be answered and displayed documents that could not be challenged, and waited with complete patience while the apparatus that operated on spin discovered that spin necessitates something underneath it. You cannot bluff someone who has already reviewed everything. You cannot outmaneuver someone who constructed the case before they walked in the door. You cannot endure in public the collision of what you have asserted and what is factual, not when someone has organized both of them side by side and requested you to explain the discrepancy. And when you flee, when you depart the chamber rather than confront the inquiry, you do not escape it, you take it with you. Were you lying then, or are you lying now? The inquiry that possessed no effective response, asked calmly, answered with silence, succeeded by footsteps, archived forever. A permanent record of what occurs when a platform gets mistaken for a foundation, when performance gets mistaken for preparation, and when allegiance gets mistaken for truth. Jasmine Crockett had shown the entire nation something significant that Thursday afternoon. The receipts exist, someone is always willing to review them, and the rostrum belongs to everyone.